Howdy, hello, and welcome to the 8th episode of the Preferred Podcast. I'm your host, director, producer, writer, composer, editor, actor, PA, and CEO, Salche Preferred.
And I'm the Heart of Alabama and the co-host of this prestigious podcast, Amber Valentine. The
Preferred
Podcast!
We're back from the dead and ready to slay the day away.
And what better way to slay
than with the topic of slay.
Slay!
Although you've had very little involvement with it, it's something we both love and it seems to be a topic approaching very soon. Today's topic of slay is musical theater. So we're going to be discussing our faves, not so faves, and some that you could see us do very, very soon, but we'll get into that. So musical theater, let's talk about her. There's a difference. I didn't want to really talk about regular theater because let's be honest. Anyways, but when it comes to the theatricals of music, musical theater is simply just a production that involves music on stage. I mean, it's been around forever. Do you have one that you remember like being your first like musical? And I mean, there's some like musical movies that aren't like really classified as musical theater. But do you have one that you remember being like, oh yeah?
So I didn't see it, I read it. So in music class, we would read over musicals at some point, and one that I read, actually the very first one that I read and learned of was Fiddler on the Roof, which is a very, very, very old musical.
I was about to say super old.
So, and it's actually a pretty fun musical on top of that.
So that's like the first one you remember any in like introduction with?
Yeah.
Fiddler on the Roof. That's a kind of, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of a introduction.
Well, that was like middle school introduction though. So that kind of makes sense. Other than that, like movie-wise, my very first introduction to a musical was Grease.
I was about to say Grease, I feel like is an OG introduction for everyone.
Right, which, I mean, Grease kind of is a musical, but, like, isn't a musical. So, like, it's kind of that in-between, but I look at it as a musical, and I was watching it at, like, 8.
I look at it as the OG, like, base for all high school musicals. And I'm putting air quotes there because that includes, like, not only actual high school musicals. In my opinion, that also includes, like, Glee. You know what I mean? It was a very big introduction for Glee. West Side Story. You know what I mean? So on and so forth.
I love West Side Story.
So many, I feel like, you know, it's a big platform that it gave. But what are your favorites?
So my all-time favorite is actually Phantom of the Opera.
The Phantom of the Opera.
I feel like Phantom of the Opera not only gives a mystery, but like
it's a very mystical.
100%.
Yeah.
And honestly, which you don't know this, but my favorite part of Phantom of the Opera was the boat ride.
I thought you said the butt ride. No, that's actually my favorite. When the they're just sitting there.
Yeah. It's what's the song that plays? I just looked at it the other day when I was going through the playlist.
I feel like it's an interlude, isn't it?
It's been so long since I've watched the movie. But I remember in 2020 when the world shut down, I was laid off for like 3 months, and like halfway through my layoff, I had seen this post about how they were doing like a free Broadway show on like YouTube Live, like on stage and everything. And like I sat there for the 3 hours it was, including intermission, watching that. I had friends over and I was like, just so y'all know, if y'all are here at this time, that's cool, but it's quiet time. Lights are going off. We're watching the TV. And we all sat there and watched it.
Yeah, no, it's a really good... I feel like it's difficult for first introductions to musicals. I feel like when it comes to musicals, like something like Grease, Hairspray a high school musical is a super easy introduction.
Phantom of the Opera, you have to be able to appreciate.
I would say it's like hardcore level, like that Cats, that type of level. You had to really no one. I don't mean this in a rude or shady manner, but no one just kind of outreaches opera. You know what I mean? And it's literally opera. Phantom of the Opera. You know what I mean? And it's not full.
You mean Phantom of the Opera?
Yeah. It's not full opera, of course, because a lot of it's in English, but a lot of it's also an operatic tones and like what's vocals, I guess you would say.
And it just speaks to the heart.
Yeah,
like
it's a really really good musical.
And you can get so many things out of it. Like you can get the romance out of it. You can get like just the mystery itself out of it. You know, there's so many takes you can take on it, and I don't know. It's definitely beyond an intermediate play.
Yeah. And I have to admit, my favorite is an intermediate. My favorite is hands down Hairspray. Hairspray has been my favorite since I was a kid. First, originally OG, I saw the Hairspray by John Waters with Divine, and that obviously is an incredible movie. If you have not seen the OG Hairspray, please go out and see it.
And Divine is
incredible.
Divine.
Yeah, Divine, quite literally. Then, they made it into a musical, and then the movie came from it, so on and so forth.
Zac Efron.
Yes, and obviously John Travolta, which brings me to my next favorite musical, which is Grease. Grease has been a childhood favorite of mine. Way before I even really understood what a musical was, I kind of thought it was common for movies to have music in them. But that goes to prove I've always been involved with
so in other words,
theater
since
and musicals.
When you were a kid, you were queer.
Yes, very much so that. And I mean, even in high school, I started high school theater when I was in high school, obviously. Theater really like genuinely brought me out of my box, and I don't know if I would be like open or even like fully doing drag to the way I'm doing it now. You know, like being able to interview people if it wasn't for being on stage, or even being on stage in general if it wasn't for being on a stage with literally 200 people standing and sitting in front of me watching me deliver and sing a line. You know what I mean? So I think musical theater is very important.
Right.
You know?
I wish I could have gotten more into musical theater. I was just in drama class.
Yeah.
Because coming from a small little village, that's all we have. But I would place Grace as my second, with Rent very close to second for me, because
Rent is really good.
Well,
a lot of people give Rent not enough credit.
Do they really know what Rent's really about?
I mean, I feel like that's why they don't give them. A lot of people I've talked with about Rent have always just pushed it off as depressing, or not a good musical because it's so sad. And I'm like, but y'all like Les Mis.
And Les Mis, I watched Les Mis literally the day that it dropped in theaters, and I slept the whole 3.5 hours the movie was.
I was about to say, speaking of faves, my not so fave is one being Les Mis. I do not like Les Mis.
I agree with you.
For the longest time, it was literally my least favorite, but I have to say West Side Story has taken one of those places. West Side Story.
I love West Side Story.
It's so overplayed. It is so overplayed.
But
it's West Side Story. Boring.
See, I feel like I love West Side Story because it brings in like a different culture in musicals. Yeah. Because like musicals itself is focused on a specific culture, which we obviously know what that culture is. So to be able to see other cultures brought into musicals for me is almost like a spark, I guess. And I love West Side Story. I love the feuding. It's a very like Romeo and Juliet, but like,
I mean, that's what it was.
Overplayed, like you said. And I love it. The overplayedness of it. And
none of the music is good to me. Like if I'm in for a musical, I want the music to be good. And see, that's where that's where Les Mis actually kind of boosted up, because I saw a production of Les Mis and I actually like witnessed the music like happening on stage, and I was like, okay, this is a little different. And then I don't know who played the part of Anne Hathaway in Les Mis in the Broadway or in the production that I saw, but she sung her heart out to that song, and I quite literally cried, and I was like, okay, Les Mis is not that bad, but my hands down. Well, it was a moment, okay. My hands down least favorite has to be Hamilton. Hamilton is the worst. Taking history and making it into a musical is probably the lamest idea I've ever heard. I know that's a horrible thing to say, but it's the truth.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the fact that I've read Hamilton, but I've never seen Hamilton.
It's not good. The music is trash. The music is such trash.
I'm sorry. My least favorite is a tie between two, and people can come for me if they want to, but Heathers as a musical, horrible. And Mean Girls as a musical, horrible.
I could agree with Mean Girls.
I
don't know
Heathers.
if I could agree with Heathers.
I love Heathers as a movie.
That's true.
I do. And I love Mean Girls, especially because I'm like the OG Mean Girls movie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I can't do the musical. I can't, even with like Grease. I'm so OG Grease, I can't do Grease 2.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, well, that's a different story.
That's high school
That's a
Grease.
different.
We don't need high school Grease. Heathers as a musical, my friend tried getting me to watch it with her like 3 different times, and I fell asleep within the first 20 minutes every single time because it's boring. I don't know, I guess. But I'm for the movie.
Well, to kind of touch bases on that, a lot of the times when they try to do the movie to musical, musical to movie situation, it gets really sticky. We saw this recently with the new Mean Girls movie.
Which were OG Mean Girl movie girls.
The situation with the Mean Girls musical, like the Broadway musical, is the fact that Tina Fey is an incredible director, an incredible comedian, an incredible actress. However, a comedian should not make a Broadway musical. That to me does not add up. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
now,
in the sense of the Heathers the musical, they took an OG cult classic and tried to make it a musical. In my opinion, it's not bad. Mean Girls the musical is bad. But,
that was horrible.
But
and I as somebody that has watched the movie of it, it was horrible.
Yeah. But do you remember when they used to do the lives? Like I think it was MBS or I think, maybe used to do the musical lives like Grease Live, Hairspray
Wicked
Live.
I've seen Wicked Live.
And those were a moment in time. I wish they would bring those back. I remember the last one they talked about was Bye Bye Birdie Live, and it was
that should bring back some
it was
memories.
it was supposed to be with Jennifer Lopez.
Oh.
And it never happened.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm curious now.
I don't know why it didn't happen, but I was kind of wanting it to happen, and it just kind of faded off.
I've never actually been to New York to be able to see a Broadway show, which I've always dreamed of. My uncle, who has known that I've loved Phantom of the Opera since I was a child, has always promised me like, if we're able to, like, we'll go to New York to see this on Broadway. If I go to New York, the one thing I will see before anything on Broadway is Phantom of the Opera. And then they canceled it on Broadway.
Which is
last year.
Because it was
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
It was one of the longest, I think it was the longest running show on Broadway.
Which is good.
30, 40 something years.
But why before I got to see it?
Oh, it was really good.
You saw it on Broadway?
Not on Broadway, but I saw it in Memphis.
I was like,
it was a Broadway production, but it was in Memphis.
But not like the Broadway production.
No, the only ones I've seen in New York Broadway were Hello Dolly, Kinky Boots, and Wicked.
Oh, I would kill to see Wicked, though.
Wicked was really good.
I'm excited to see the new movie of
Wicked,
though.
Here's the thing about Wicked. They don't tell you...
Wicked?
Yes, but that's not the point. We're talking about the musical here. Not talking about personality traits. They don't warn you of how boring the first half of Wicked is, because it is so incredibly boring.
Now, have you seen Wicked before you seen the Broadway Wicked?
Oh, you mean like a filming of Broadway?
Yes,
that's not a movie.
It's movie enough, girl. Like
It's an illegal filming of a Broadway show.
It was on a VHS tape.
So it's an illegal filming of a Broadway show.
I know you don't know what VHS is.
I do, actually.
Because that was like 5 years before your time.
No, I have VHSs right over there, you dumb.
So do I.
They never tell you how boring the first part of Wicked is. So I almost fell asleep the first part. But then Defying Gravity happens at the very end of Act 1. And it blew me away.
Okay,
and she started flying in the air. And I was like, ah! To touch back on the Broadway, I saw Bette Midler as Dolly in Hello Dolly.
Boring. I'm just kidding.
Hello Dolly is really good.
I've never seen Hello Dolly.
Barbra Streisand.
Or Dolly. Dolly.
Go to the OG Carol Channing.
Okay, my heart.
Wait, anyways, exactly.
It was Mohart.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I thought you said Monet.
No, I said that was the point.
Oh, I thought you said that was Monet.
No. And then there was Barbara, the OG Barbara. And then in the Broadway production, when they brought it back, Bette Midler. And I've always been obsessed with Bette Midler, from Hocus Pocus to Beaches. In Kinky Boots, I saw Brendan Urin and Tanya. Yeah. Speaking of Kiki Boots, drag, when it comes to musical theater, I feel like it's a very common connection. Especially New York City. New York City is like the hotspot of drag.
So can I tell you something?
What?
And ain't nobody gonna throw no shade towards me.
I'm already
not
throwing
come for
shade at
me.
you.
I've never seen Kinky Boots.
Kinky Boots is so good. Well, to be fair, the movie Kinky Boots is don't watch the movie.
I've never seen
it's so good.
Like, I know of Kinky Boots, but I've never actually seen Kinky Boots.
Kinky Boots made me cry so hard. Especially Hold Me in Your Heart. Oh,
I'm gonna act like you don't cry, but I've seen you cry. So.
To know that, and a lot of people don't know this, Cyndi Lauper composed the entire Kinky Boots.
Really?
Yeah. I actually did that in your trivia. Yeah. Your preferred trade trivia? That was one of your last questions. Yeah. Cyndi Lauper composed all of Kinky Boots. And it's crazy to like listen, because obviously she wrote it specifically, for it, because she wrote a song about Kinky Boots. Like, come on now.
That's something that I want to see, but I've never actually seen.
No, it's super good. I recommend everyone seeing Kinky Boots if you get
I feel like it's something like Heather's where you have to see both, so you know where you fit with it and what you like.
But as mentioned, drag is a common connection when it comes to musical theater. And I feel like a lot of that, as I stated, it helped me come out of my shell. And when you break it down, you're putting on a character, you're putting on makeup, you're putting on an outfit for that character to go on stage to entertain an audience. That's drag. You know what I mean? Then you have queens who make their whole entire drag nothing but musical theater.
Jinx Monsoon.
Plasma is another one who we've seen in the most recent season of Drag Race. Jan is another one. I used to love these queens because I used to relate a lot with these queens, but now looking at them, they're kind of obnoxious.
Okay, so like, I don't know. I kind of live for just a little bit for Jan's musical theater, only because Jan references our favorite musical theater series,
and also our timeline. She's in our timeline of musical theater.
Glee.
Yeah.
She is very rich.
She's very. I was just about to say that, but
she's
also
very our fit.
Something that's different than her, though, than the other ones, is she can actually sing.
She
and dance.
Not as good as Rosé, though.
Okay, Rosé can dance, but I would say
Rosé can sing.
I would say Jan can sing more than Rosé.
I don't know.
I would say which it's not fair to compare them because they were both in Stephanie's Child. They're both sisters. But
I feel like I'm biased on that because I've heard Rosé sing live personally, versus Jan, but Jan gives me that very Gleek, which I love.
To defend your case, I will say when it comes to Rosé and Jan, I have Rosé's song "Devil in the Details" downloaded. I do not have Jan's Jantasy song downloaded. I guess that fits your case.
But that's because you don't like Jan.
But you have a bunch of those in the local scene of Birmingham. I really don't feel like you have that many of those, to be very honest.
We really don't have musical theater.
And it's kind of disappointing. And I feel like a lot of it's because musical theater with drag is a little overplayed.
Right.
But I mean, like, you gotta do it.
It's kind of like, you can do both, but are you more one or the other?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
But when it comes to bringing musical theater and drag, we are actually dipping our toes into that with the brand new The Preferred Brunch, which we're going to get into more later. But yeah, we decided to take the musical theater aspect into drag. I've never done a musical theater show, I don't think. I wanted to start a brunch, obviously. It's been in the works for quite some time now. And, you've wanted to be a part of a brunch as well. And whenever I had the conversation with the owner of DDC to start the brunch, he was all for it. It was all green light. And then it was coming up with the theme. And I was like, of course everyone's going to want to be a part of musical theater.
First off, I'm going to call you out because don't discredit me for the musical theater idea. Because I had a huge part in that. I'm going to pause you, even though you are all ideas behind it.
But I'm going to pause you because that's the theme I've had listed for my birthday show since I've started my shows.
So I made it more about me and you agreed to it.
But what I will say that I did differently was instead of everyone like making the whole show theater themed or musical theater themed, which it is, it's actually called the Broadway Collection. But
which is sickening.
Yeah, and that was actually you. Right? No, well then that was me.
It was you because you confirmed it. With
yes.
Me.
Anyways,
it was a group thing.
But the difference that I wanted to make was instead of everyone just doing random musical theater numbers, I wanted everyone to be assigned by themselves, of course, a specific musical production.
Mhm.
So you have the Phantom of the Opera. I have Grease. We have Ember Xerxes, who has Hairspray. I let her slide with that.
I really hope she. I love you, Ember, but I really hope she pulls it off, which I think she will. I really hope she pulls it off because well, and that's such an iconic musical within not only life in general, but the queer community in general. Yeah. Like.
And then you have Deja with Mean Girls, and then our special guest put in representing Wicked. Like I said, we'll be talking more about that and where you can get tickets about that later.
And speaking of musical theater with drag, we got a lot of that in the Rusical this week.
We did, which brings us to the time of the day for...
Rate These
Queens! As Amber mentioned, this week's episode of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 16 was in fact the Rusical.
So it's time to take our view of this episode to a review.
So in the last episode, Geneva Carr, vroom vroom, Miss Carr, Clear Customs, just went home.
Finally.
Oh. And something wow, that was so rude. Something that we didn't notice and then you actually pointed out was Geneva,
girl. Because I know what you're talking about.
Geneva wore these same exact shoes in every single episode. RuPaul's Drag Race Season 16.
That she was on. I seen a meme of it.
And the fact that we did not clock it
at all
is really the most concerning part.
And we're how many episodes in now?
7. That's horrible.
We're horrible drag queens.
That is so bad. Something I did clock is she did do a split in every single episode. Which I thought was gaggy, and I clocked that way before.
I would say, I mean, a stunt is a stunt. Like, if you can do a stunt, like, you do it.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you do it good every time, you're good.
Mm-hmm. But just to really touch up really quick, who are your favorites so far before we start the episode?
So far, my favorites are Dawn playing Q and Megami per the previous episode.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, we saw last episode that Q finally got her win.
That she cried about for how many episodes?
Again.
And what then was in the bottom before she got her win.
She cried when she came back into the workroom again.
From winning.
She won, yeah. But we actually see that...
Pheromone who?
We actually see that Dawn is a little upset by this.
You mean Buzz Lightyear?
That was a good read. That was a very good read.
I didn't know Megami was shady.
Yeah. We actually see Megami and Dawn a little tease at each other, and we see my favorite quote from this episode, which is Dawn looking at Megami and saying, "Megami, f*** you." That was probably my favorite part of this entire episode.
Hilarious.
But we also see something that is not hilarious. We see a little crack in Saphira.
Saphira's, I don't know. I feel like Saphira is not feeling very mother of drag at this current
I feel
moment.
like the last episode really got her. It really got her in her feels. And she openly admits that when talking about drinking the potion.
Now, I feel like others, Plain Jane, had played into that, Plain Jane. And I'm not going to say no names or anything
but
because I feel like...
Plain Jane.
I feel like that had a place in it because I feel like she was already in her head. Mm-hmm. And then that really kind of like put that like, yes, I'm going to be bad into her head.
But something that would hopefully, and I feel like does hopefully clear her head, much like Geneva with clearing customs, is announcing that this week, as we mentioned, is the Rusical, aka the Sound of Music.
Oh, and I love the Sound of Music.
I don't. I don't like
know you don't.
It's not one of my least favorites. It's just kind of boring to me.
I feel like it's very.
I do like microphone drop. I do like Julia.
As I said, a specific somebody was very vanilla creme in that position, which we'll get into. Did not like, and I did. I don't know. I feel like the Sound of Music is like Little House on the Prairie with music, and I feel like it kind of like updates it in a sense, you know. I love the Sound of Music and the aesthetic and the age of the Sound of Music. Yeah.
But before we get into the actual casting part of it, quite the opposite of you and, you know, similar to me with this musical, Dawn actually hates musical theater. which we find out. And I'm kind of gagged because a New York City girl hates musical theater.
And
really, and she's from North Carolina, so she moved to New York City. And I'm just like, choices were made.
right. And like, has Dawn not seen musical theater in New York?
Like everywhere?
Because like the one place to learn to love it is New York, because New York does musical theater.
Well, going into New York and going to loving it, we also see Plasma, of course, falls in love with this week's challenge, and it's quite frankly a little gross. We talked about theater queens, and she is
okay, but
very much
her.
so serving. It's
but
gross.
It's her.
It's gross.
But it's her.
I'm so sick of it.
But okay, but like if you were on the season and you could win at musical theater, wouldn't you be excited about musical theater?
I mean, I just wouldn't be like, I'm gonna win! Anyways, so then we get into the actual casting part of it, and we see, going down the line, it was kind of a toss-up between each other with the casting, but we see Dawn get Strudel, we see Maya gets Sister, Nymphia gets Ditto, Plain gets Baronet, Q gets Baroness, Tsunami gets Baronet as well, Megami gets Schniddle, Saphira gets Mother Superior, of course, Plasma gets Mariah, which we'll get into, and Morphine gets Sister Fister.
And there was some, a few feuds in there, specifically between Megami and Plasma.
Uh-huh.
And then Morphine, Q, and Saphira.
Well, and then we see Mother Saphira clock Morphine really quick.
Ooh. Mother
quick.
Is mothering right now.
Mother is mothering. And then we see that with the Baronets and the Baroness, the shady group, we see the Plain Jane, although Q is supposed to be the one in charge of the Baroness, we see Plain Jane is actually the one leading the cold and shadiness, which is very interesting.
Which is very Plain Jane, though.
She's turning Tsunami. Turning Tsunami into a shady mess.
Tsunami voiced it.
Yeah, and we also saw Morphine voiced Tsunami's crush for Plain.
Oh,
which I thought was very
that was shady.
I thought that was very interesting.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And then getting into the actual parts where they start choreographing and learning their actual roles, we see Plasma about getting a leading role.
She questioned it being too much.
And I'm just like, girl, you're in musical theater, girl.
And it surprised
me. And you wanted the lead role.
Right.
Knowing the lead role is in every single scene.
But I also almost feel like it may have been too much for Saphira and Morphine.
Oh, well, definitely, but don't about it.
Oh, wait, no. Megami may have also struggled with that. I feel like it could have been too much for Megami as well.
No, I definitely agree. But getting to the runway to do the choreo, we see that Adam Shanksman is the choreographer for this episode, with a little special help from the one, the only Melissa McCarthy.
Who brings my all-star.
Yes, and she brings great advice with also great snacks, which we love to see.
And she is like my all-time absolute favorite actress.
She doesn't do anything to help the choreograph, but
do you think she knows choreography?
No. When it comes to the choreography, we see that Maya also struggles a little bit because she expected to just go with the flow, which kind of confused me. You're going in to learn choreograph.
There were no flips.
Choreography, exactly.
There were no flips. Why would she excel in something that doesn't include flips?
Mm-hmm. And with this, we see Megami in the background just watching everyone struggle. And she actually says that she loves to see everyone struggle until she, of course, gets on stage and struggle.
And specifically talks about a few specific queens.
Mm-hmm. And we see Q calling Plain a man, which I thought was very funny in the sense of dancing, because, it makes sense.
But Q walks in drag like a man.
Mm-hmm. And we also find out that Plain was also a ballroom dancer in her younger years, which was pretty interesting to me. I honestly kind of thought that was pretty gaggy, not gonna lie.
And mind blown, because I definitely would not expect that.
Yeah, and it really genuinely shocked me. But getting into, just to really make some notes on the actual musical itself, The Sound of Music, we had a little bit of confusion, in my opinion. I understand they were going for The Sound of Music, but with like a touch of modern pop. It seemed very pitch perfect-y.
It was horrible.
I did not like the music at all. In my opinion, when they did season 14, Moulin Rouge.
Mhm.
It was the same way where they did the Y2K, like, or the, I guess you would say, newer take on the music. But in my opinion, it fits so much better. Even last year with Footloose, it fits so much better. This seemed just so out of place. The music did
It was
not
very Gen
fit
Z.
at all.
It was very Gen Z.
And I didn't like it. But something I did shockingly like was Morphine in the nun outfit. Although her body was a little unproportional, I'm not gonna lie. She was wearing
Her body.
really big.
You mean her
boobies.
BBL?
Well, no, it was her boobies that were off. But then we see Maya also in the nun outfit, and we see the face getting covered by her outfit, which I thought was funny. And through, out of the nuns, we see Morphine really slay, and Saphira also really slayed, but something I immediately clocked was the Barbie crotch on Saphira.
Oh, we both clocked it.
We know how I feel
We
very
both
much so
clocked
of
it.
that. And all I'm going to say is the character of Mariah, definitely not the person of Mariah, gets on my nerves.
And we also do not agree, which you will hear on that here soon.
Yeah, it was very
Because
bad.
we almost got into a little bit of a verbal feud over it.
She just does way too much. Like, she really needs to calm down. And someone who is way too calm, in my opinion, is Nymphia, who doesn't seem to know her words at all, which is not good.
And musical theater is not for bananas, which means it's not for Nymphia.
Yeah. And then we see Q is also serving up Barbie crotch. And is a little questionable on the lyrics. I don't think she didn't know her words. I just could not see her mouth her words, which was very weird.
I think
her lips were drawn too big, to be honest. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
I personally feel that she was worried because even though she didn't necessarily have choreography, we know she's not great at stepping or walking in general. I feel like she was just worried about nailing her steps, that she was forgetting what she had to say, kind of thing. If that makes sense.
But overall, all in all, the musical this year was not my favorite. The music itself was honestly the worst part to me. The people were good, but the music itself did not fit the actual musical to me and was very off-putting.
I don't know, it was very middle school for Drag Race.
It was very High School Musical.
Yeah.
Which I did not like at all.
And that's not Drag Race aesthetic.
No. Moving on to the runway, we have the theme I Can Buy Myself Flowers, which is essentially just a flower themed. And I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of living for this already. But first on the runway, we had Plasma, who I'm not gonna lie, I have strong feelings about Plasma, and none of those seem to be good. But when it comes to this actual runway, I loved it. It was giving, as mentioned, one of my favorite musicals, almost a musical, Hello Dolly. It was giving very, very Hello Dolly with a touch of floral, and I genuinely loved it. Getting into the musical, I said it from the beginning, I thought she was doing way too much. She was, not gonna lie, she did have her stuff down, and that's not the issue. She was just doing way too much with the stuff that she was given. She was just doing too much. Every movement was like a shape from God, and it's like, girl, calm down. And it was so much to the point where she was ahead of everyone else, and that became an issue to me, because then I just had to read her for that. So in my opinion, overall, I'm gonna give her a 7.
So with her runway, I thought it was charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. Because if I say the other word, you're gonna bleep me out. The colors were everything. The silhouette was everything. The outfit was everything. It really gave me old-fashioned drag, but with like today's color scheme, which I live. Her performance style, I thought it slayed, personally. Now, I watched it again, so I get where you're coming from with the too much. But drag queens on Drag Race are told to do more. They're told that more is more. So I guess I can see where she came in the preparation of more is more, and with the idea of going for the crown. I don't know. I was living for the energy personally myself, because I guess I also relate to that energy.
It's in the sense of, if you do so much more to the point where you're messing it up, what's the point?
Vanilla Creme had the same energy.
No,
It just in a shorter clip.
when it came to Ben de la Creme doing the choreograph with the two dancers in the background, she was with the dancers.
She didn't.
What's your rating?
Plasma didn't just.
What is your rating?
10.
Anyways,
my rating for Plasma is 10.
Speaking of mothers, an actual good person.
Who?
Mother of all, Miss Safira Cristal, we have on the runway serving nothing but gorgeous, gorgeous, lovely drag. It was everything to me. I loved it. In the musical, she played the part very well. She was funny. I think she was definitely the upstage to Plasma. She was giving Plasma a run for her money. And I definitely think she was second place for this week. In my opinion, Safira was a solid 9.
Safira on the runway, yes. Literally, I wrote, yes, the world. Because Safira on that runway was everything. That back piece, I literally wish I could create that right now to this day. Her on the performance-wise, I agree with you. She definitely gave Plasma a run for her money. Mm-hmm. However, I still place her second. I feel like the theater queen really gave more, just that little extra theater with that little extra jazz. Mm-hmm. Even though Safira was serving mother, as she is. That's all I had to say about Safira. So, with Safira stepping her pussy up, I also give her a 10.
All right.
As my second place.
Well, someone who definitely stepped their pussy up this episode, especially for it being a musical and me not expecting it, was Morphine, who on the runway was serving amazing 70s vibe. I loved it. I thought it served a little bit of camp. I was obsessed with it. When it came to the musical, I thought she was the best in the musical. She held her part very well. She knew the choreography. She knew the choreography. She knew how to move her body. She was very in place with the other people in her group. I thought she was incredible. To me, she was a 10.
So, Morphine really surprised me during the musical because I have not seen that side of Morphine yet. Mm-hmm. And she really pushed me through. However, controversy between the two of us, I feel like her runway was very what somebody would wear at the beach. Like somebody from Amber would just casually wear at the beach. Mm-hmm. I feel like it was very simple, it fit the theme, but I just feel like she could have done more with it personally. Mm-hmm. So between that and her slaying the challenge really boosted me to a 7 for her. Mm. Because I feel like she could have done more because anybody can make that outfit and wear it is where I was at with it, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Someone who can do some things that others definitely cannot is the one and only Queen of Flips, Miss Maya, who on the runway was not doing it for me. I did not like anything about this outfit, to be honest. It was very old school, but not the good old school. I was not a fan of it. I hated the hair color. It did not go with anything. But then in the actual musical, she was still not good. She was a hot mess. She was okay with the choreography, I guess, but she just really did not do it for me. Tonight, Maya, the Queen of Flips, was a 4.
So her runway, to me, it looked borrowed.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. It really didn't fit the flower theme either.
Now, I live for the color scheme and the idea that she had. However, it was very unfinished. The idea for a flip queen is that, but it's very unfinished. And like you said, it didn't fit the theme of the runway. And her performance itself, I don't know, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't good. Yeah. She was doing too much thinking during it, which one of the judges, which I think was Ross, had said that specifically, that we could literally see her thinking during it, which Slay, she pulled it off at the basic at least. Mm-hmm. So I personally give her a 5 because I don't know, she come in at the beginning as the Queen of Flips, and she's just not giving the queen. She's only giving the flips when she's in the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Someone who definitely we will not be seeing, I feel like, in the bottom anytime soon, is the one, the only Dawn, who on the runway was so good. I love the colors of this, the hair, the makeup, everything about it was so good. When it came to the musical, She was the best of the group in my opinion, but she still was kind of mid. She didn't really do anything that stood out. But for someone who doesn't like musicals that much, I thought she did pretty well. For me, Dawn was a 9.
So for her runway, literally all I wrote was orgasm.
Yeah, it was
Because
really
I
good.
mean, it was
So good.
it was so good. It was very simple, but it was a very, very good simple. Her during the challenge at the beginning, I was kind of worried about her. I feel like because she's not a musical theater person, she kind of second guessed herself. But as she got into it, she kind of slayed. And I love how she brought her specific comedy into it. And that's what I love about Dawn is Dawn has that specific comedy that nobody else has done. She's able to keep it true to herself. So I'm personally going to give her a 9 only because I feel like she kind of, for the performance wise, kind of like dimmed down just like a tooth, like just a twitch.
Someone who definitely dimmed down in the musical was Megami, who on the runway gave a very interesting and cute concept. I thought it was an idea that no one else would have really thought of. I would have never really thought of that, and I thought it was very well executed, but it was a little questionable. When it came to the actual musical, I will say she did snap into it because during the practice of the choreography, she was struggling probably the most, and she did collect it for the most part. Was she bad? No. Was she the best? Definitely not. In my opinion, Megami was a solid 8 this week.
With her runway, I loved it because I thought it was a great concept. And she really took a turn on the flowers idea, which I love when you take the main idea and like turn it into something. So I was living for it. Her face was giving, although it had been pointed out that she's done that face quite a few times.
Which I'm confused by.
And
okay.
I guess I never noticed it, but that night her face was giving. Her during the musical, I feel like she slayed in the aspect of she struggled during the choreography part, which she did last time too. And I feel like she still come around and slayed the choreography at least enough to be able to pull it off kind of thing. So at the end of the day, I'm going to give her an 8 as well.
Someone who didn't really slay either of the challenges this week for me was Nymphia, who I was not really a fan of both in the musical or the runway. Something that really gagged me with the runway, she said it was unexpected, and no, that was definitely very expected, especially for it being yellow.
I mean, at least it wasn't a banana.
I'm close to it. When it came to the actual musical, she just wasn't really doing it for me. I feel like she forgot a lot of her words. I feel like she really wasn't in the moment. She was very forgettable for me this week, and she was kind of a mid for me. So it's a 6 for me.
So the runway for me was literally a no. It was very basic. Again, like I said, no banana at least. So at least we got a different reference, but that's all that really wowed me of it, and it didn't even wow me. But her during the performance was not giving. I could see she tried to throw a little bit of comedy in there, which I feel like kind of like upped her score just a little, but you cannot rely on comedy when you're Nymphia. So I'm gonna give her a 7.
Someone who you were obsessed with this week and I did not see a lot of potential with was Q, who on the runway was very cute, but a little bit confusing. I definitely see where it was coming with flowers, and don't get me wrong, it was very stunning.
But she fit the theme for sure.
Yeah. It was just a little confusing. If I wouldn't have like paid attention, I would not have gotten flower at all.
I definitely don't understand the arm stilts, but I mean, it was something new.
When it came to the actual musical, she was not, I don't know. She just, it's not hard to sit there and mouth, I don't know. She definitely picked that role or stood by that role for a reason, and it's because it was the most simple and she got away with it, and that is that. For me, Q was a 7.
I live for Q in this moment of her runway because I love the pink face, which was a face. I feel like she slayed the outfit for her runway other than the arm stilts. definitely better than what I thought it was going to be. Now, her during the challenge itself, I lived. It gave very Belle de la Creme, very Jinx Monsoon, very Broadway to me, and I know you don't agree. But I feel like she really played that role of that specific main character. I really feel if she was in the Sound of Music, like, she would be that main character, because I feel like she gave the today's age energy that the main character alone did. So I would rate her at a 9.
Next up, we have Plain Jane, who on the runway was giving very basic, but as she mentioned, very different for her. I just don't know if I really agreed fully with it, just because it was very basic. But in the musical, she was one of my favorites. She did so incredibly well. I was so incredibly happy with what she did, and I was honestly obsessed. For me, Plain was a 9 this week.
So as a Plain stan, come on hair. The hair was giving. I was living for the hair on the runway. Other than that, the rest of it was not a Plain Jane look. I feel like she was trying to be somebody else look-wise other than the hair. In the performance, I don't know. I was living for her, but I feel like she kind of like dimmed down just a little bit because of her role. I don't know. I feel like she could have given a little bit more. And I noticed the body was not her body. At the end of the day, she was giving an 8 for me.
For the final one on the runway, we have Tsunami, who was it was cute. It was a little awkward. Is that a right? Yeah, I feel like that's the right word to say. But in the musical, she faded once again, like usual. Kind of getting tired of it. Not gonna lie, she continuously keeps fading, and she's not doing anything for me. So for the runway, I will give it a little bit of a higher point. She was a mid-6 for me.
For Tsunami's runway, it was stunning, but it was giving very Simone or Rasha O'Hara on Drag Race. Not today. Just specifically on Drag Race. I feel like she did it, but she could have did it better because, the other two could have wore it better. In the challenge itself, I was living for her trying to step out of her box, but she was pushed back into the background. I didn't necessarily forget about her, but, I forgot about her, if that makes sense. So, at the end of the day, I would give her a 7.
But getting to the runway to the critiques, we see that Plain Jane decides to not use her potion, which is very smart because in my opinion, she did very well. And that we see Saphira was essentially confirmed to be the supporting actress to the Mariah, aka Plasma. We also see that Morphine apparently is lacking confidence, which I don't know to be fully true. I feel like Morphine is there. I feel like she's been serving moments. She very much so knows who she is. But I could see where they're coming in the sense of she doesn't know how to step outside of her box. Maybe that's the confidence that they mean.
I feel like Morphine has so much more to offer, but she's not letting herself do it, is what I feel.
And then, as you mentioned, we also see that Michelle reads Megami for her makeup, which I'm a little confused about. I feel like there's a few other people she could have read about their makeup.
But I also
blush.
But also with the playback, I see where Michelle is coming from with it. Because, she does have the same face.
And through the deliberations and the judges' critiques, we see that Plasma is the winner chicken dinner this week. And I'm not going to talk about it.
I clocked that one.
I feel like a few other people could have gave them a run for their money, specifically Saphira.
Or Q.
And I'm not going to lie, Morphine, I feel like if the judges would have liked to run her way a little bit more, she could have been up there.
But I also didn't like her runway that much, personally.
But when it comes to the bottom, this is where I have questions, because my main question being is, why was Megami even in the bottom? You had someone who did not know their lyrics at all and wore something very predictable. It's Nymphia. Predictable and not really elegant for the runway. And they were not in the bottom.
I could see her close to the bottom, but I don't see her in the bottom 3. If anything, I maybe see her like 4th.
Being safe, yeah.
I don't know. It just... I feel like at this point, we're getting to the point of Drag Race where we're playing favorites.
Well, I feel like it's also in the point of they want to get rid of filler people. And that's a situation in which you shouldn't be casting people to be fillers. You should be casting people based on their talent.
Now, I can say Nymphia does have a better track record than Megami.
Well, that doesn't matter. She still should have been in the bottom. Anyways, we see that Megami and Maya end up being in the bottom two, which we see through this lip sync that Megami does go home, which is a little questionable, because we also see that Maya takes off her shoes, which is, that's like a golden rule to not do in Drag Race. So I don't know how she did that and got away with that as well.
To me personally, taking your shoes off is like taking a wig off with no reveal, and she should have gone home for that. It was very horrible and not it. And Megami for me was giving me very emotion. She was giving me the song itself. Do I feel like she could have picked up her step a little bit more during the upbeat part of it? Yes. She should have went home.
My only thing is, the only thing I could possibly see is Maya did like give it Maya made sure it wasn't only just a ballad. Maya gave dance moves, gave movement. She didn't just sit there kind of like Megami did.
But she did it with no shoes.
That was my one thing. Yeah, no. I definitely agree, because in my opinion, no shoes, no wig is an immediate I shouldn't say disqualification, because you still have to go through it, but it's an immediate, you're losing the lip sync. And I thought that was kind of like a basic rule in Drag Race. Like I thought me, the audience, and RuPaul were all on the same page that if that happened, you were going home. So I guess that's why we both expected Maya to go home. I don't know. It was very confusing. Main thing though, I don't understand why Megami was in the bottom. That should have never happened. Then this would have never happened. We also saw this with a couple episodes ago with Mirage. Why was Mirage in the bottom? It made no sense. But Mirage should have never been in the bottom two, because she wasn't bad as a host. And her outfit, in my opinion, was not bad. Genuinely. Well, RuPaul hated the wig, and I'm still confused about that, because that just seems like RuPaul put her in the bottom just because of the wig.
I don't know. I feel like her
Which we saw that too with Aja. Aja in All Stars 3. RuPaul put Aja in the bottom too because of her wig. And now next episode we see the Snatch Game, so that should be a very exciting episode. I'm super excited.
I love Snatch Game.
I don't remember seeing any of I remember us being like gagged by Nymphia's character, but I don't remember seeing the character or who the character was or anything like that. So I'm kind of going into it like clean slate.
We're going in blind.
Yeah, I don't know who's doing what, and I'm genuinely really excited, especially with all these. I feel like we have a bunch of like acting queens, like queens who can act, except for Maya, which we'll see.
Can't do anything but flip.
Don't forget to catch the new season of RuPaul's Drag Race on MTV every Friday.
And, of course, come to the channel every Wednesday to listen to us rate these queens.
New. There have been lots of exciting new things announced this week and more to come, so let's get into it. First off, we had while we're on the subject of Drag Race, we had a brand new episode of UK versus the World.
Which surprised me.
It was a very good episode, not gonna lie. It was a very shocking episode. I was left bewildered and gagged. We had Mayhem, who went home last week. She was the first U.S. queen to go home, leaving Scarlet Envy, the other U.S. queen, still in the competition.
Which, as she should have.
Mm-hmm. And then we also had last week La Grande Dame and Marina in the top two. Obviously, Marina sending home Mayhem. And we have La Grande Dame in the top again this week, which was pretty exciting. This time with Keta Minaj, who I wasn't really expecting to be in the top, but I mean, hey, she definitely deserved it. I thought her looks were really cute.
I personally didn't feel that she should have been in the top either. Mm-hmm. However, I'm living for our French queen. Yeah, she's kind of slaying thus far.
Yeah, La Grande Dame is doing
it,
and
she's very like stick figure kind of bodice, but like she's giving, and she has a comedy to her that's so different.
It's so,
and I live
stupid.
for it.
Yeah,
and the way that she included like French mannerisms in her runway really pulled me in.
But speaking of her runways, this episode was a ball, which I thought was very interesting.
Very soon, actually.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And the bottom two of this episode being Arantxa and Teresa, which I was so sad to see Arantxa. And I don't agree with this bottom two either. I've really wholesomely thought so many other people could have been in the bottom, including Hanaconda. very confused by Anaconda. But through this, we see that La Grande Dame won the episode, sending home Arancha, which I thought was horrible. I was expecting so much from her. And yeah, her looks were not the best, but her looks were not the worst. So I feel like she could have survived and, whatever.
I was living for her looks, but I feel like she was being too much of a pretty woman kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Her outfits were very simplicity versus drag, if that makes sense. Which I live for her, but like, you have to be able to give that drag aspect. And I feel like she was just lacking just a little bit in that.
I don't know. I was super excited for her. She was one of my favorites, so that's why I'm a little hurt. I also hated Theresa May's outfits. I feel like Theresa May could have went home just for her outfits alone. They were not good.
See, I don't know. I feel like they weren't as simple as Arancha, though.
I don't know. I feel like when you put it down to simplicity versus execution should definitely weigh in a lot more.
I see that, but at the same time, like, what I see visually on the main stage, I don't see what Arancha was giving. You know, especially being most people that watch Drag Race see the visual and they're like, that's drag or that's not drag kind of thing. So I feel like visually she just wasn't, she just needed that little bit more kind of thing.
Well, hopefully we will see more of her. You never know.
I'm sure we will, because she's a huge queer icon, or working to be a queer icon.
All-Stars Drag Race All-Stars Espanol just recently happened, so maybe she'll be on that in the near future. But sticking with Drag Race and Drag Race Queens, actually on the most recent YouTube video, you can watch me becoming Mistress Isabel Brooks from RuPaul's Drag Race Season 15, the last season besides the current season. And she is one of my favorite queens. So doing her makeup was definitely a gag-worthy moment. It was definitely an interesting moment. Amber actually walked in the middle of me filming this video, which you do not see in the video because it was edited out. But
I told her to edit me out of this one because I've been in every one since.
It was definitely a gaggy moment. Like I was not expecting it to. I'm not gonna say it went the best, but I wasn't expecting it to go that well. So definitely make sure to go check out that video. It's a very interesting video.
Heads up, it's very scary. If you can see her eyeballs, let me know, because at one point when she was done with all the black liner, I could not see her eyes.
Yeah, it was,
and she didn't believe me until she looked in the mirror.
Well, and I think the gaggiest thing about that is when I did the Trixie Mattel, the Becoming a Trixie Mattel, her liner is so much bigger. And you could see my eyes way more. See, and I think a lot of it, though, is because the black under eye. Trixie has the white under eye, so.
Well, I also feel like Trixie kind of keeps her eye makeup more centered with her face and more rounded with her face. To where Mistress takes hers straight to her hairline. And when you take your makeup straight to your hairline, it gives a whole different look.
Darkens everything.
Exactly. And it was sickening though. I told you how many times that it was sickening.
I just hate seeing myself in a different makeup style. Like even when I did the Trixie Mattel one, I was like, I don't like this at all.
And I feel like with the Mistress look, the one thing that hid your eyes was the small concealer. That small rounded circle concealer is what hid your eyes. Which, it fits Mistress's face, it just doesn't fit your face.
At all. And I think a lot of it's because I haven't done that in so long.
Right.
But make sure to go comment on that video if you would like to see me do someone else's makeup. I've honestly, another one I've really wanting to do recently is Deja Sky.
Oh,
I want to put Deja Sky's makeup on my face. I feel like that would be really, really cool.
Especially being she's very bright with her colors.
And I mean that, and also like when it comes to a lot of her like, when I saw her announce on her season, I was like, I want my contour like hers. And so I took a lot of inspiration of the blending from her contour.
I would say, because she's very soft with hers.
Mine was definitely an inspiration. The blush came from Candy. The contour came from Deja.
Right. I mean, you can paint my face again.
Anyways.
In a different look, because last time it was scary.
Some other exciting news that we have coming up is the Country Queens have now officially been casted.
The what?
Country Queens.
I don't know what that is.
So that will be coming up very, very soon. And if you applied, make sure to continuously check your emails, check your phone, because those will be coming out March 1st. Everyone who applied will be getting a message, so do not worry if you did not make it. You will still be getting a message. That sounded so mean, but... And with those new exciting things, another new show or another new segment of a show that I have coming out very soon is another new episode of The Preferred Few, which should be coming around the corner very, very soon, so stay tuned with that.
So coming in the next 4 weeks, we have a new segment of the Preferred franchise. Preferred franchise? Yes. The preferred franchise. We have a brunch coming up, which is very sickening and very interesting down in Dothan, Alabama, where we bring in musicals.
Yeah, so we have the cast members with special guest Puddin this time, who I'm very, very excited to hit the stage.
I'm super excited, especially because she's coming back out in drag specifically for this.
Yeah, and as mentioned earlier, everyone is representing their own form of musical. We have Puddin representing Wicked, and we have, of course, Amber Valentine representing the Phantom of the Opera. We have Amber Xerxes representing Hairspray, Deja Moore representing Mean Girls, and your host, myself, representing Grease. That is going on March 9th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. 1 o'clock because we are drag queens. We don't get up that early to paint our face. You can get tickets.
You're not going to get up that early.
I'm definitely not. And if I'm the
rest
host,
of us will be.
I'm the host. I'll be there at 12.
Because half of us have a show the night before.
Exactly. That is happening March 9th at 1 o'clock p.m., so make sure to get your tickets online. You can get them on any of my socials at The Only Preferred. They are $15 online if you get them in person. They do bump up to $20. All of those monies, all of the benefits, the entertainers of the show goes directly to the entertainers, so make sure to get that in. And that does include food, too. So if you pay, you get unlimited food, unlimited drag shows. You just gotta pay for your alcohol to make us look prettier.
And it's gonna be a home cooked meal.
Yes.
The link for the tickets will also be in my link tree, and I will be personally sharing it myself. So y'all can get tickets, because I feel like this is about to be sickening.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for it, personally.
And this, not to really go into a lot of detail about it, but this isn't going to be the only preferred brunch. It's not going to be happening every single month. I'm looking at doing them maybe once every month. It really just depends on how the first one goes. I will say the next one has not been predicted to be casted until May. With that being said, it will not be happening.
Time for me to be in that one.
It will not be happening all of the time, but make sure to come out and support so that we can get more of it, because you never know.
And who doesn't love a brunch?
Of course, a brunch. And then that night, don't forget the preferred show happening every single second weekend or every single second Saturday of the month. The preferred show this month, I guess I'll go ahead and spoil it, is the birthday ball in celebration of my birthday month, which is March.
She's going to be 44.
Yes. And we have a lot of special entertainers. I'm not going to go ahead and announce that list because that can be waited to be announced, just to build you a little anticipation. One person I will announce to be in the show is Puddin', so you can catch Puddin' in the preferred brunch and the preferred show that night. And a lot of other special guests. I want to say the other names so bad because I feel like everyone would go crazy, but you'll have to look on all my socials to see. And of course, next week when we talk about it again.
And what are your socials again?
At The Only Preferred. Keep it very simple.
And coming soon will eventually be some behind the scenes of not only the preferred show, but just videos and podcasts in general. On my channels and my socials, specifically TikTok itself, because I feel like the behind the scenes will kind of help explain what we or Sajay herself does and how much it takes to be able to make what we do. On my stuff, we're going to start doing just some little clips of like us getting into drag, us messing up in the middle of our podcast, which y'all clearly don't see because, you know, we cut it out. But, and I mean, even behind the scenes of like Sajay recording the preferred few with other people. So I'm kind of excited for that.
And we're definitely going to be kicking that off with the next The Preferred Show, which we have already discussed and planned of you filming as an upcoming video to kind of tease the more behind the scenes work that you'll be doing. And also just to give y'all, like I mentioned in the running a show video on YouTube, I really wanted to do like in the dressing room originally. And I was like, that takes a lot of planning. That takes a lot of dedication. That takes having someone to film. We get to do that.
And you just have so much on your plate. I just feel like taking over a little aspect of it will kind of help boost me a little bit.
And speaking of a lot of my plate, I have a brand new website coming out this Friday, the 23rd. You can find all of the preferred fews, all of the entertainers, and more info about the entertainer of the preferred few, as well as the upcoming preferred shows, past preferred shows, podcasts, stories, so on and so forth. There's going to be so much information on the website to come. You will get more teasers about that coming up this week. And specifically after this is being announced, I think Thursday is when I have the teasers set to come out.
And if you watch my preferred view, make sure you watch my other videos because, girl, she's a mess. Okay?
But with exciting new things to come,
it's time to get into your exciting new questions.
So your question of the week, Amber, is would you say you're scared of the dentist?
So in response to the question, am I scared of the dentist? No. I definitely am not scared of the dentist. I've heard all the drilling, but I've also worked for an oral maxillofacial surgeon. So working for an oral surgeon, it really kind of helps me with that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are scared of the dentist. It's not something that's really ever scared me. But I will say I don't enjoy necessarily going to the dentist, if that makes sense.
I definitely don't enjoy it because, like, I don't know. At the same time, like, I eat so bad sometimes that I am curious to, I'm scared to know if my teeth are going bad because of it, you know? Mm-hmm. Just like, you know, I'm sure my health is. So, Sajay, your question reads, how many relations have you had so far?
I would probably say on a realistic level, 2 or 3. I don't really classify, like, romantic relationships don't really ever get to that part of classifying them as relationships, if that makes sense. Usually, one, to put it out there, contrary to popular belief, I'm a very slow taker gal. I like to go on dates first and really get to know the person first.
So you're boring.
But when it comes to actually having a relationship, I don't know. I feel like if it gets to the point of calling someone a relationship, which, you know, we know people who are not like this and like to jump in quick gun, real quick.
Let me just...
Married in a day, girl. I can't.
Ooh, engaged in 2 months.
I don't really call it a relationship until I've been talking to that person romantically for at least 2 or 3 months.
So how many romantic relationships
So with that being said, they haven't made it to that. I don't know. I feel like I can find myself like connected to someone and then I don't know. Something just happens and that connection is lost.
So how many romantic relationships have you actually been
I would say like 2 or 3.
Okay. So your 2 or 3 relationship was also your romantic relationship.
That's really all I really like, relationships, like, right? That's what it means, right?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on person because when I think of relationship, I think of friendship as well because if it was specified as a relationship, then yes. But I mean, in regards to the question of how many relationships, I personally would feel like I'd say like 5 or 6 because I do have relationships with specific friends that are very close to me, but aren't quite romantic, you know?
I mean, I get that in the sense of like a soulmate, but right. I just really kind of see that as like a friendship level.
It kind of depends on person.
Because I also see it as, like it really, I guess that's really it depends on the person because ships, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like friendship and relationship, those are 2 different because friendship is a mutual connection. It's a friendship. But a relation is a relation that you share with the other person, such as the relation of love or the relation of emotions and feelings and so on and so forth.
But it could also play in the fact that, like, as somebody who hasn't been in a relationship for the last 4 years, you know, if I were to be asked that question, I'd base it off of my friendships because those are my relationships that are close enough to love, but are quite love.
Well, I mean, that's also in a different aspect. Like, I don't really get close with people in general. You know what I mean?
Except for me.
I find a lot of people acquaintances more than friends.
Except for me.
Anyways, point being is, so if it's even close, if it's even close in a friendship, I still don't. Friendship is still a totally different aspect of love. Like, friendship of love to me is like my mom love. You know what I mean? It's like caring for someone because they've done a lot for me and I've done a lot for them and we've shared a lot of memory, blah, blah, blah. But with my brain of a relationship, this is the whole process just to explain two different views. Anyways, my former relationship has always been like, I guess you would say a formal relationship, like a couple, a romantic feeling. You know what I mean? Like, if I say friendship, my version of friendship would be your version of relationship because that's a friend to me.
Right.
Anyone who I get close to call a friend is a friendship to me.
See, and like you relating to your mom, I definitely support that. However, I cannot relate a lot to my mom because my mom is very homophobic.
Yeah, well.
So I guess the lack of parentancy for me really pushed me to that close connection with my friends and my people, which really necessarily turned that relationship into a family relationship for me. Especially because I have a large group of best friends. Each specific best friend relates to a specific part of me, you know, and I feel like that's what carries me along because I know I don't have that figure other than my people.
You said you don't have a connection with your mom. I don't really have a connection with emotions and people. You know what I mean? Like, I can like someone a lot, but if I say love, that's a big word for me.
Right. And that's the same with me. Like, I never throw love just around because love is a very strong word. And like, if I tell you I love you, like, that means you are very dear to my heart and you are a relationship or friendship aside from that I will carry for as long as I can.
And it's never in the sense of like, I don't mean to be rude about it because, you know, a lot of people who come to my shows or a lot of people who know me through drag or so on and so forth, they'll be like, oh, I love you. And if you notice, and this isn't shade to people who have clocked it or whatever or are now clocking it, if I am awkward with saying it back, I will always throw girly at the end. Always. Or babe. Always. Because it makes me so uncomfortable. I feel like I had to put a friendship name in it to make it less uncomfortable.
See, and I'm the same way because, like, one thing that I always call people is my love through life in general. But if I just say love or I just say you're okay or you're good, that's how you know, like, I'm about to skip out of this conversation.
Don't forget, you can ask us questions by simply clicking the link in both of our bios.
So what are you waiting for, Charlie? Go ask. Now. Like, for real. I need to ask this something, okay?
With us being all talked out, it's time to end the episode. Make sure to follow all of my socials at The Only Preferred for brand new videos, shows, and looks.
And you can follow my socials at Amber_V_Valentine on all social platforms. And check out my link tree because it's all there. Duh. We also have new looks and videos because, you know, drag.
Comment who your favorite was in this episode of RuPaul's Drag Race.
And follow for more episodes of the Preferred Podcast every Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube.
It's been nice talking.
And we'll talk to you later.
Stay preferred.
And full of love.